All right, so moving on, we have a presentation by the Singapore Games Association, or SGGA. Obviously, one of Gamescom Asia's biggest supporters as well. SGGA is the primary trade association for the gaming and esports industry, and they represent the Singapore games industry on a global stage as well. The chairperson of SGGA is Gwen. Gwen's a sound designer by profession. She co-founded Imba Interactive and also kickstarted Game Audio Singapore. A local game audio community provided knowledge and sharing among students and professionals. She'll be sharing some insights into the Singapore's game industry on GameDev, esports, and up-and-coming SGGA initiatives as well. She'll be later joined by a panel from Battlebrew and Gentlebros, two of Singapore's most promising homegrown game studios. So put together your hands for Gwen. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. If you're like me and you're an ambivert, which means you're a combination of an introvert and extrovert, seeing each other in person for once can be both exhilarating and also very nervous. So welcome to the club of ambiverts. So a lot of things have happened since December, which was our initial pitch session to ESG, STB, and IMDA. So what has happened? Well, in August, we actually had the official announcement of our launch, August this year, and now we are officially the primary trade association for gaming and esports, backed by ESG, STB, and IMDA. So for us, what we aim to do is that we aim to build the ecosystem in Singapore for gaming, right, and also be internationally recognized for the Singapore gaming brand. And how do we do that? Sorry, it's a bit small, but I'll try to read it out to you. So we do this by building bridges. So we have a network of people from all over the world, publishers, game developers, and we also have relationships with the various gaming associations around the region as well as globally. And with that network, we continuously exchange information and opportunities for each other. We also do communication and amplification. So every time something great happens in the industry, for example, esports team wins, or maybe a new game is being developed or a new game is being published, we always amplify on our Facebook page. So if you want to know everything that has got to do with the gaming industry here, feel free to like our Facebook page and Facebook group. We also have networking and opportunities. So I think previously, if you all have heard of the GameDev Drink Up, every month we actually have a networking opportunity for everybody in gaming to just get together, have drinks, speak to each other, have fun. And then we also have an industry database. So if you visit our website now, we actually have a database of all the gaming companies in Singapore, mostly game development at the moment. So if you want to find out more about the industry, just feel free to head over to the database. And we also are doing capability development and accreditation. So by capability development, which is a huge part, which is having industry talks, workshops, seminars, etc., to kind of uplift the skill set of the developers and the esports industry here. And then, of course, finally, we have infrastructure and structure. We continuously find ways to kind of build up the structure and ecosystem in a very big picture over here. So these are some of the Singapore games, and a lot of familiar names there, like Cat Quest, Skull and Bones, Battle Royale, Battle Sky, and even board games like the Artemis Project. And we also have a community of SG GameDev. So if you take note of these hashtags, SG Games and SG GameDev, you just look for the hashtags in Facebook or Twitter, you'll be able to find more information. There you go. So on top of that, a huge part of this new Singapore Games Association is also the SG Esports portion. So for SG Esports, right, we actually created this brand to kind of consolidate all the esports news in Singapore. So how do we celebrate what we don't know? A lot of our esports teams have been doing so well, but we don't know much about it because there isn't like a one-stop shop to kind of look for this kind of news. So that's the whole purpose of the SG Esports. So if you go on Facebook, you type in Singapore Esports, like that page, you should be able to find all the news there. So apart from that, we also do things like we try to attract international leagues into Singapore to work with our local esports service providers and companies. We also do standardization and accreditation of the company so that when external parties want to work with Singapore esports, right, they know immediately who to look for. some of the activities that we do. So I think some of you have been part of our esports focus group. So we've been quite diligent in holding up our esports focus group for the past couple of months and getting tons of valuable feedback, and this will help shape the rest of the roadmap for next year and beyond. So we will be holding the same focus groups this coming maybe December or January next year, so keep your eyes peeled out for that. So when COVID struck, right, just now I told you about GameDev Drink Up, we couldn't have GameDev Drink Up anymore. So in that place, we held some of the activities. One of them includes the Indie Soapbox, which gives indie developers a chance to present to the public when they haven't had the chance to present in the public before. So all this was held online, Then we had about 3 to 4 teams come and present, and each time there's about 30 to 40 people attending. Apart from that, we also do learning trips and missions. So I think for some of you who remember, we used to do the Singapore Pavilion at different trade shows, both overseas and locally as well. In terms of learning trips, last year we went up to Level Up KL with a Singapore delegation. So they had the pass to Level Up KL, as well as the ability to mingle with the biz match system and also visit some of the top indie studios there as well. We also support game jams. So game jams is something that we always enjoy. And this year, actually, sometime right before National Day, we held a 1-week-long game jam called Heritage Game Jam, which we supported and organized by this small group called Saga Kaya. And it was to make a game from what you think your Singapore identity is. So it was quite cool. Like about 150 people signed up, and there was a total about 30 games. And then apart from that, we also been holding workshops. So just last Friday, we held our very first hybrid workshop after such a long lull. It was a really nice workshop between Huawei and Unity's UDP. So that one was really useful. There were about 15 people on site and another 15 around there, like fully online. So yeah, that's our first experience with hybrid events. Hopefully COVID lifts and we can continue holding more in-person events. And last but not least, the most major event that we hold every year is the Industry Day. So the Industry Day was initially started to help bridge the gap between what the schools teach and what the industry really is like. Because as good as the job that the schools are doing, there are some things that they don't teach, and a lot of things like experiences and stuff. So we get people that have indie experience, AAA experience, any other experience and education that you don't learn in school. We actually have speakers from these backgrounds, and they will present it to the kids. So this year, because of the addition of esports as well, it extended from 1 day to 1.5 days. So we managed to squeeze in talks that are both dev-based and esports-based, and we had peak concurrent attendance of about 170 people, all fully online on Zoom. Yep, so a little shameless plug here. If you're interested to know more about events and want discounts and more opportunities to showcase your games at the Singapore pavilions and stuff, please sign up for our membership. And if you have any questions about membership, you can ask myself or the SGGA fam right there. Raise your hands. Yeah, you can go and look for them later. So, yep, we have 3 major tiers: individual, corporate, and gold tier. So you will find out more when you go on the website. Okay, so let's talk about some data, right? So Newzoo already did a really good job of presenting some of the much more updated data than ours, but we can only say that for Singapore, even though we don't have as many players in our country because of its size, but we have a huge spending power compared to the rest of Southeast Asia. And based on our database for game devs, we have about 130 active game-related companies, institutions, and individuals. About 2/3 are into content development, majority self-published on mobile and PC, and about 10% are publishing houses. So we have new challenges for this year. Of course, we have Tencent, which is huge, and it's here and it's hiring. We have Riot Games. We have Alter Culture Studios, which is a cultural transformation through games. We have Storms, which is a hyper-casual publisher. We have Cargo Studio Fam right there. And then Cargo Studios, by the way, by Kingmaker Entertainment. And of course, we have Electric Square Keywords International Studio. And last but not least, we also have Career Braves, which is a newly launched jobs portal. It's a collaboration between SGGA and our friends in Malaysia, and it's also supported by MDEC in Malaysia. So if you are looking for jobs, feel free to hop onto Career Braves. So they consolidate all the game dev jobs or gaming jobs, right, between Malaysia and Singapore. And of course, the game releases from the Ubisoft fam right here. We have Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Congrats on the release, everyone. And then, of course, 12 Braves Shining Beyond just launched like a few days ago. So feel free to check it out. Also, No Average Joe launched the Old Money Pay Money 10th Anniversary Edition. Mystical Mayhem is published by Rock Nano, and Gorst is published by Spring Loaded. And of course, we have quite a few article features and a lot of familiar faces here. We have Last Regiment by Boomzap on SCMP. Valcom Post featured Mighty Bear Studios. Channel News Asia featured Coax Studios on a solo game dev horror game. Ghost Lore as well got featured on Coconuts Co. And 10 Day Studio got featured on Pocket Gamer Biz. And both, Gentlebros and Chinatown Detective appeared on the Straits Times, so it's pretty big news. I mean, if you didn't previously know about our Singapore games, like here it is, it's been appearing on the news everywhere. And of course, winners, we have Battlebrew that won the GDC pitch for Noodle Superstar, which is pretty cool, and Jungfish, which did Monstrum 2. And Jungfish, by the way, is a studio that's half based in Singapore, half based in UK, but they did win the UK Game of the Show award here. And in fact, our board games are doing pretty well as well. A lot of the Chords is internationally renowned, as well as Capital Gains, which did cryptocurrency. And then very recently, Battle Royale also won the best iPad game. So it's really huge news for a lot of the games here. And we are always very open to looking at how our studios can collaborate. Just because we create an IP on its own doesn't mean we cannot collaborate with others. So recently, Battle Sky Brigade, Battle Royale, and Cat Quest 2 actually did a cross-IP collaboration, which is really, really cute. You should go check it out. Niantic's Beyond Reality Developer Contest, like a bunch of Singaporeans, they got together and they flew overseas to the US and they got honorable mention for their development. And I think also we are talking about collaborations between game development studios that traditionally do digital games collaborate with board game studios. So when you look at Plantopia, which has a very successful Kickstarter, right, it's a collaboration between Daylight Studios, which originally does digital games, with Daryl Chow from Origami, who is a board game community leader here in Singapore. So in terms of Singapore esports, we have no shortage of achievements here. In terms of stats, right, so this data is not publicly released yet. We are still consolidating most of it. It's with the help of our data analyst volunteers from SGGA. And what we can infer from this is that Singapore is home to over 50 active esports-related companies. So it's quite a pretty vibrant industry here for esports. Majority of them are service providers, such as producers, league operators, events organizers, etc. About 31.3% are esports teams and talent agencies. So I think what's really interesting about this data is that it's quite different from a lot of countries out there. Like most of the countries have the service providers is way a lot more than the teams. So why is it in Singapore like the teams and the service providers percentages are quite close to each other? So some of the things that we infer is that because Singapore is very small, so the need for service providers to serve our community is not that huge compared to other countries. Secondly, I think because the teams, they like to set up in Singapore because of the ease of setting up businesses here. So that does not necessarily mean that the players are from Singapore per se, but the teams are set up here. So one is ease of business, and second is that Singapore is like a global hub for interconnectivity, both global and Southeast Asia. And in terms of our global esports companies, again, Riot Games, the HQ of esports is here. There's PGL, Moonton, Tier 1, Team Secret, and One Esports. So majority of them are international companies that set up shop here. Well, unfortunately, due to COVID, we couldn't have very, very large-scale international tournaments here. But we did have one in last year, which was the One Esports Dota 2 World Pro Invitational. So that one was very well supported by various companies such as DBS, Tumi, and Lazada, etc. huge turnout. And but despite that, we still had community events going on. So even though COVID prevented international tournaments, we still had a lot of community tournaments going on. So in terms of competitive achievements, Resurgence, now known as RSG, actually came in champion for the season 5 of the Mobile Legends MYSG event, right? So it is really, really great for them. And of course, everybody knows who Xian is. So Xian, once again, is the winner of the Capcom Cup 2020. And of course, Xian has been qualifying for the Capcom Cup for the past 8 years. So it's no surprise that he won this time. And of course, Brawl Stars, internationally, we have a winner, all made in Singapore team. So this is really huge news. So next time you think about Brawl Stars, you think about, wow, okay, you can tell your friends that the top team actually came from Singapore. So that's wrapping it up for the esports. I would like to introduce Shawn and Desmond to come onto stage for the panel. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, so Shawn is from Battlebrew and Desmond is from Gentlebros. So you've seen a lot of their names of their games and studios appear many times in the presentation just now. So why don't you all give yourself a little bit of introduction and also how you got into the industry?
Me and my teammates from Gentlebros, we actually started in Koei Tecmo, which is a Japanese games publisher in Singapore. But working in a AAA company like that, you kind of feel like a small gear in a machine. So we kind of worked our own stuff in our free time. I mean, with the company's blessings, of course. And that game got picked up by an American publisher called Congregate. And we actually used that as a means to go out on our own and start the Gentlebros, right? At that point in time, we also managed to get grants from Spring Singapore, as well as a lot of support from, back then it was called MDA, now it's IMDA, so we got a space in GSC, and then later on Pixel. So it's great, we had a lot of support from various government agencies, and yeah, that's pretty much how we started, yeah.
So for my team, some of us were classmates back in Digipen also, including my co-founder Ben, myself. We then went on to actually work for other large companies. I went the Japanese companies route. I was at Nubi and then at Gumi. Some of my other crew members went to Ubisoft. And after working for, I guess, the large companies for a few years, we wanted more creative control and in some cases financial control, and decided to come together and start our own studio. Yeah, quite an interesting journey for us. First game we launched was in 2018, picked up 4 awards that year. And then the second game, I guess same as like Desmond, is also part of Apple Arcade's lineup. Yeah, that's how we started.
Yeah, I mean, both of you have came from the corporate background and also came to the indie space, right? Like, what made you have the courage to step in? What do you think were the benefits of setting up a game studio here in Singapore?
Courage. I'm not sure whether I'd phrase it necessarily as courage. I think for some of us, it's more a creative drive. I mean, definitely a conscious choice was involved somewhere, but I think for us, it was just we really wanted greater control of the games that we created and the vision that we had, as well as also the choice to work with people that we really liked working with, aka classmates and colleagues we enjoyed working with. So yeah, I think it was more of I think for us at least, it was more of a personal decision rather than a business decision that led to the birth of our studio. Yeah, that's us.
I think we're quite similar. I think working in a big company, a lot of us didn't really feel like our creative passions were being fulfilled. So we definitely wanted to come out and start something of our own. Whether there's courage involved or not, I'm not so sure about that. I think it's more like I still remember the first time that that I actually resigned and left the job. I couldn't sleep for the whole night. I was like, oh my gosh, man. It's like, now I'm not going to get like a cushy paycheck at the end of every month. Now suddenly it's like our future is really in our hands and up to us to control. But at the same time, it was super exciting because, you know, we get to finally make the things we wanted to make. And I think it was thanks to that especially our team, like we managed to make our dream game, which ended up being Cat Quest, which is really awesome and a dream come true for us. So I think it's great. As to starting why Singapore, I feel there's lots of, business-wise, there's lots of tax incentives here. Location-wise, Singapore is great, right? All the bigger stuff like Apple and Google is here, and I feel the location proximity really helped in us building really close relations with all these big players in the market.
Yeah, I think stable infrastructure and easy access to a lot of big companies definitely helped a lot. But I think for us also, it's where home is. And I mean, number one, I guess all my team is from here. Second part is, we talked about big companies earlier, right? And we did talk about leaving at a certain point, but I'd also like to say that we're very thankful for all the experiences that we had there. We could not have made what we made without, you could say, the training and the contacts and the experience. So I think that is actually very key to the success, that there's a successful ecosystem here. And there was both mentors and inspiration to draw from. I think that was definitely a factor in the success.
Yeah, Shawn, just now you were mentioning that it's been quite a journey, and I imagine quite in like inverted commas, right? I think now's a good time to segue into the challenges of why it's really tough to set up a game studio in Singapore.
Well, I think as with any venture that starts out, right, there's risk involved. I think for some of us, obviously, there was a crossroads that we were at also. Like, you go, am I really going to leave my AAA, relatively comfortable game job, making well-known IPs to go and, at least when you're starting out, right, take a huge pay cut to work on something super risky, right? Yeah, I mean, starting out is always challenging.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are, Singapore, or you're in the States or Europe. I mean, the challenges faced by indie developers is pretty universal everywhere. I mean, we will have problems with marketing, exposure, right, finding an audience for your game. So these are challenges that every indie developer faces. But I think the challenges unique to being a developer in Singapore is probably, I think, the game industry isn't that matured here as of yet, right? So as compared to maybe Australia, where there's a huge budding indie game development community already there, hopefully something similar can actually springboard here as well. So newer indie developers who want to start in Singapore already have the help they get, and there's already like veteran developers out there ready to help them. So just personally, that's what I think the challenges are.
Well, I think to shed a little bit more light on what you just mentioned, right? I think that there is funding out there, but again, it's for rather specific genres and approaches. So I think when you talk about, like, say, indie studios, we're somewhere on that like strange line in between like indie and more business focused. So yeah, we managed to score a round of investment, but I will admit that I think we had some business approaches that were pretty clear in mind. If you, for example, we're pitching a more niche game that had order mechanics that might be tougher to secure investment, like as a creative endeavor versus a business endeavor in Singapore.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the tough balance of your creative desire as well as whether this game is actually appealing and marketable to the masses or the target audience that you want to target. So I think just a question about your past as well. I mean, as mentioned, both of y'all came from the corporate background, right? What do you think are the pros and cons of working in either indie or the corporate background?
Yeah, so I mean, working in a bigger company like Koei Tecmo, I mean, it was exciting, right? Because I still remember we were working on games that I grew up personally playing, right? So it was really awesome to work on like the sequels or subsequent games in that particular series. And obviously, the games that we work on are higher profile, right? A lot of people are excited for it. So yeah, there's a certain sense of excitement of working on the next Assassin's Creed or the next Warriors game or whatever. But of course, working in a big company like that has a lot of like corporate structure and restrictions. You don't really have a lot of say or creative freedom in a sense of what goes into the game. At least based on my experience. So actually starting your own indie company gives you a lot of creative freedom to do that. You literally get to make the game that you want to make. Right. Obviously, you don't get the security that you might get with a regular job, right? But I think that also contributes to the excitement that you get being an indie, because you really do feel like you get to control your own fate and really make the products that really drives you as a creator.
So I think it's interesting that Desmond mentions that because like I guess it's an odd statement, but freedom is responsibility. And what I mean by that, so as an indie, you're free to make what you want, right? But you're also responsible to, I mean, example, make enough money, have enough runway, take care of your people. Everything that you took for granted in your large company, you now have to deal with, including HR, finances, legal, clearing the trash, things like that. All the stuff that you took for granted. But at the same time, I think it's a lot more enriching because you quite literally have a greater ownership of everything that you're creating and doing. So yeah, it's simultaneous trading of responsibilities and freedoms. I don't think there's a better half of that. It's just what you want to do. And of course, that sometimes changes as you grow older or your priorities change. There's definitely key lessons to learn from both sides.
What are some of the things that you all miss the most from working in corporate?
Oh, that's a good question.
For me, it's the pantry.
You can buy your own food, what?
Yeah, that's true, but free food's always good, right?
Well, we have a lot of food in our office, so that's what we do.
We work from home.
Oh yeah, because you guys work from home,
why.
right? Yeah, okay, yeah. What do I miss? I think I miss having more colleagues to work with, which is, I mean, so you get a nice cozy crew as an indie. But yeah, sometimes it's just having more, I guess, on a creative sense, colleagues to bounce ideas off, other departments that are dedicated to entire sections of game making or business running. So for example, an in-house QA team. That's something I definitely took for granted. And then you go indie and you go like, right, okay, we are all going to like test this, and then you have to go and get outside expertise. Yeah, I think really it's a bit like the previous question, everything that you took for granted, including finance and legal. Like suddenly you have to learn accounting, well done. Like, yeah, go figure.
Yeah, it's just like having the infrastructure already there, right? Like admin, accounting, financials, all there. Right now we have to do it all ourselves, so or hire someone to do it. But yeah, I think definitely.
Do you all think that it's a lot easier to start an indie game studio now versus when you all first started, or the other way around?
Oh, I mean, from personal experience, I do think it was probably easier when we started because there were lots of grants still available back then. Yeah, so, and also, I mean, competition is always there, but yeah, I think all you need is a great idea. But I don't know, I feel like no matter when you start, there's going to be challenges, right? So yeah.
Just
don't be
unique
afraid.
challenges.
Yeah, it's just different or unique challenges.
Yeah.
When you begin, yeah.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, I think the situation nowadays, there's a lot more, how how to say, trained developers of different stripes and expertise. So if you look at, say, forming a team or maybe even having inspiration, I do think the industry, the number of indies, example, that we saw this year and last year starting up, and the stuff that I'm making is actually quite inspirational. In that sense, I think the barrier to entry now is lower, but yes, of course, competition is higher. So it's again, it's a trade-off.
Yeah. So I imagine it's going to be really tough for indie to start now, also because of COVID, where everything has slowed down. All the conferences are fully online. It's really hard to network now. But how have things changed for both of your studios during the COVID period versus pre-COVID?
Okay, so for us, we are, or at least we were, studio-based. So when COVID hit, suddenly there was the lockdown and everybody was work from home. So I think the tasks are definitely transferable, but communication styles had to change a bit. And I think for us that was the biggest thing. So I mean, we were already using Slack and a little bit of Discord here and there, but having things jump primarily to Slack and Discord full-time took a little bit of adjusting to. I think some of the crew, I guess depending on who you ask as well, got a little bit lonely. So I think we're used to seeing each other. And communication lag is also a thing. So it's sometimes a little bit harder to be spontaneous because most of the best stuff comes when you're like sitting around at lunch or something and you know someone says something that's seemingly stupid, but it's actually a great idea and you just go like,
I know
that's great.
The word you always use is serendipity.
Serendipity, yeah. Serendipity. So it's harder to get that serendipity because you automatically self-censor the moment you have to type stuff and then press enter or enable mic to speak. You're already making a choice to censor or not. And I think for us, that's the biggest change. So I think everybody had to take more effort and steps to, I guess the phrase I use is over-communicate or try and force in a little bit more of our thoughts rather than self-censor. And that doesn't help that I think a lot of us are introverts by nature. So yeah, the urge to self-censor does come in sometimes. I think that's the biggest change for us.
Yeah, I think for us, because Gentlebros has always been primarily a remote-based studio, we work primarily from home. So when the pandemic hit, we didn't really change much, right? We still continued operations as per normal, but I think what we did feel affected by was like the reduction of physical shows like this, right? Because we relied a lot on like going to conventions like this to meet new people or catch up with old ones, right? And also like maintain and build that relationship with all these people. So having the lack of these conventions kind of like forced us to try and do this in another way, right? Whether it be just sending the email or trying to gain that contact in another way instead.
But then again, a lot of the magic that happens in this networking when you go to an overseas convention, like hanging out after the convention, is totally missing.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's missing. That's missed.
And
definitely.
that's really hard to replicate, right? Like you can't replicate the experience just by sending them an email or messaging them.
Yep.
Yeah, you also don't really build that rapport, right? With someone like having an after party at GDC, you know, you really build that relationship with someone, or you can always remember the time when you hanged out for drinks and stuff like that. Having a Zoom call with someone is nowhere near
Not quite the same.
yeah, it's nowhere near that level
really
of relationship you would build. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've heard of some companies from other industries, right? They are having their D&D, like dinner and dance thing, right, fully on Zoom, and I can't really imagine.
Seriously?
Yeah. Then they eat in front of the Zoom and all that. It's just...
So it's like playing online Dungeons and Dragons, D&D also lah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I think let's head off to the last question for fun before we have some Q&A, because we have some really good Q&A questions here. So if money wasn't an issue, right, what is the dream game that you would make? I know what you're going to say.
Do you know what we're going to say?
No, you go ahead.
That's a good question. I think for us, It's hard to answer because there's a lot of different games that we want to make. The dream game kind of changes every 2 years, which is maybe roughly or less than the time it takes for us to make a game. So I'd say we are currently working on 2 projects, and we are quite excited to make these 2 projects. Yeah, I guess put it that way.
Those are your dream games?
Yeah, I mean, definitely want to finish those 2.
Nice.
Those are good. So yeah, quite happy with that.
For us, we are heavily invested in the Cat Quest franchise. So we already have like a long roadmap plan for it. We actually want to make 9 Cat Quest games because cats have 9 lives, right? So like, yeah. So our idea is to kind of, if we had all the money in the world, obviously we want to do this, and we want to end the whole Cat Quest series with like this super duper Avengers level event Cat Quest game, you know, like AAA indie game, right? Best graphics in the world, right? You know, thousands of hours of gameplay, you know, I don't know, yeah. So that is, we had all the money in the world to do it, yeah. Voice acting.
Well,
you know.
World of Cat Quest?
Exactly. MMO cat RPG.
I mean, I guess it brings back to why you all started the indie studio in the very first place, right? What's the point of starting indie studios if you're not there to pursue your dream game in that sense? Yeah. But I mean, obviously, there are many, many different kinds of indie studios out there, and people find different enjoyment in different things. So with that, let's close the presentation, and we'll move on to Q&A. Okay, so the first question by Yukiko is, what are the most common oversights when it comes to setting up an indie studio in your experience? And also, who's your Genshin Impact main? Yeah, I know. Yeah, Desmond, you don't have to answer.
Wait, I answer first? Oh, okay. What are the most common oversights? Yeah, so not getting a lawyer, right? Not doing your homework on like the business and admin side of things, right? Like the taxes you need to pay and things like that. Getting all this settled early on really helps later on, right? Because when you start, like, you're always just all into making that game, right? So you don't really consider a lot of these things. So actually doing and getting all this right at first, I think, is a common oversight a lot of indies have. As to my Genshin main, I've really literally just started playing the game, right? I don't really have much time.
Paimon.
Paimon. Wait, isn't that? She's not even a character.
She's not current.
How many of you are playing Genshin Impact? You see? Nobody knows what we are talking about.
Yeah, so I've just started. I do hope to play more, right, after hearing such good things. But I recently got an Oculus Quest 2, so I've been in the world of VR lately. Yeah. So.
Nice.
Okay, I think I'd echo what Desmond said. It's definitely the legal, the finance stuff, the company structure, cap table, all of that stuff. So I mean, yeah, I was about to say we started as devs. I mean, we're still devs. So I mean, we can make games, but it's the other half of it, the business side that we're not as familiar with, and that, in retrospect, I think is something that every business owner kind of looks back and goes, well, I could have done that better. Definitely. As to who my Genshin Impact main is, it's Diluc. I got lucky enough to roll a 5-star twice. So yeah.
Nice. Constellation 1. Great. Okay, so I think I really agree with both of them, and honestly, I think part and parcel of legal and company structure is also, if you are founding a company with co-founders, right, it's quite important to actually have a contract between the co-founders as well, right? And like, I think there's some danger about, and some joy and danger in terms of starting up a company with your friends, right? So, yeah. Just for people that are interested in starting out indie studios, just take note that you know, even if they are your friends, it's important to have legal documentation between the co-founders, right, and directors. So we have another question. What is the biggest challenge you've encountered in the Singapore market?
In the Singapore market specifically?
Yeah.
You mean like selling the game in the Singapore market, or?
Okay, I'll just go first. Like, for us, I think we don't necessarily cater to the Singapore market. We tend to look at the international market, and it's a general East versus West thing. Obviously, there are differences between, example, the US and the UK. But yeah, it's not necessarily targeting individual countries unless they are large geographic regions. Singapore market is, I mean, yeah, dedicated gamers, but I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think the Singapore market is generally more what we call like second, their followers, they look at what is big in some of the other countries. That being said, I think we definitely have some core fans in Singapore that we're very thankful for. It's just that, yeah, due to the two things, small size, usually second, like following the US or following Japan trends or following China trends, that's what's going on. We don't target Singapore specifically for us. But yeah, good gamer nation.
I mean, I guess I'll echo a little bit of that. I think every game developer should focus on the international market, so it's not really just the local market that counts. But I think for us, the greatest challenge, from what I can think of, is just letting the local Singaporeans know that Cat Quest was actually made here. So I still remember there was like, I was reading one Hardware Zone post where someone was like talking about Cat Quest, and then someone was saying, hey, this game was made in Singapore. Like. Then another guy was like, hey, don't bluff lah, how can it be? You know, that kind of thing. Then like, I wanted to reply, but you know. So it's like stuff like, so we've been trying to work more, you know, with like local media and stuff to get the word out that, you know, Cat Quest was made here. There are a lot of other great games made here as well, like, you know, Battlebrew games, right, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you sometimes get into like interesting conversations on Reddit, and everybody's surprised. Wait, this game was made locally?
Yeah, exactly, right. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's just good that people get to know all this stuff in Hardware Zone and Reddit, you know, and actually like get to know that, hey, it's made in Singapore, so that we actually know what we are capable of, you know. So, okay, so this one is about education. There are a lot of game development focused academic courses that now than ever before. With more game dev graduates every year, what do you think are the impacts of our gaming industry?
Well, I don't think like the pandemic helps with this, but there's definitely a lot of new graduates looking for jobs. I guess the good news is that there are more game companies coming here. But yeah, competition is still tough. I mean, it's always been tough, right, in any of the creative fields, but yeah, the bar to entry is high, and there's many people competing for the same job, essentially, or role or game. This question was more about like advice for the students or a trend or what? Sorry.
Yeah, it's more of like how it impacts the gaming industry. So I think what you said is along the right track, which is that there's more like competition in that sense.
Yeah, there's more competition, but I mean, there's also some really promising folks every year, and that number rises, at least from what I see. So I think for the industry itself, it's good, but for the students, it can be tough.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right, having more courses in game development just increases the talent pool that companies in Singapore can pull from, right? It also increases the chances of something really great and awesome coming out of our region, and especially in Singapore, right? So I also think in terms of competition, it's going to have competition everywhere, right? You can graduate in Singapore, but you're still competing with someone from Malaysia or Indonesia or the United States and things like that, right? Because right now game development is international, right? Companies can hire anyone from anywhere around the world. So you may not necessarily just be competing with people locally. So, but I do think having more game courses would definitely increase the standard of talents within the game industry. That's for sure. And I think that's only beneficial to the local industry.
Yeah, I think I actually have a follow-up question on that, right? I think based on your own personal experience of hiring, right, do you think that what the schools have been teaching, is it sufficient? Does it equip the students sufficiently so that they're hireable by your companies?
That's an interesting question. I think no matter what you do, school can only do so much. Even if the school course itself is great, ultimately it comes down to the individual. So I mean, yeah, we're both in DigiPen, for example, but and it's great education over there. But if you look at everybody who ended up doing well, they already were putting in extra time back then. There's a drive to create independent of school or work, and somewhere there's a correlation between that and quality, I guess, and maybe even getting recognized. Basically, if you put in the hours and you make an effort to make what you're making known, then the rewards are reaped regardless of school, I think.
I mean, one of the very first questions we ask people that apply to us is, have you made any games outside of the ones that you've done in school, right? So having just showing that passion you have for game development and doing stuff outside of your school curriculum already shows that you are already one step ahead of your peers, right? But I do feel personally a lot of what is lacking in applicants that I've seen is not catering to kind of like the company they're applying for, right? So like what I'm trying to say is we've made a bunch of Cat Quest games, right? So it's pretty evident the kind of games that we make, right? They're like cutesy style, you know, colorful things. But sometimes we get artists who apply with like really like art styles that totally that we cannot use, right? Or it'd be hard for us to implement into the current systems, right? So likewise even for bigger companies, if you're applying to work in Lucasfilm or IOM, you know, showing that you can do Stormtroopers really well, I guess kind of helps, right? So that's what we felt is missing in a lot of applicants that apply to us. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think we've reached the end of the panel. Thanks both of you so much for the insightful responses.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Thanks.